Hey, everybody, diving into the world of construction with a favorite of mine from QuickBase. Tim, how are you?
Doing great today. How are you doing, Evan?
I'm doing well, thanks. Really intrigued by all things that you do at QuickBase in terms of, modernizing our approach to project management and collaboration in IT in the construction industry. So really keen to dive in. Before that, maybe introduce yourself,
Yeah.
your role in the company, and at a high level, for those who aren't familiar with QuickBase, how do you describe the company these days?
So Tim Douglas, I'm the GM of construction at QuickBase. Relatively new business line there, formed about 9 months ago. And I think that QuickBase is really the AI powered platform for business operations.
Mhm.
That's how we look at ourselves. It's how our customers are leveraging QuickBase to solve operational challenges within an organization, not only in construction, but across industries. But also using QuickBase to connect data between different systems that exist in any customer's tech stack. So it's an exciting time to be at QuickBase, and we're seeing some really interesting traction, particularly in the construction vertical.
That's so interesting to me. I cover multiple industries, and you're involved in many of those, from telecom to financial services and healthcare and other industries. But why is the construction industry so ripe for change, disruption, and addressing some big challenges that they have facing them?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in construction tech for almost 25 years now,
Wow.
and it's kind of amazing. As far as we've traveled in those 25 years, there's still a long way to go. And I think a lot of it has to do, I know people often compare manufacturing to construction, and why is it that construction can't just adopt manufacturing methods? And the fact of the matter is every single project is a prototype. The teams that come together once, will maybe never work again on the same
Oh, wow.
scope or scale of the project. And so therefore, every project literally is a snowflake. And even if you have the same companies working together, you may not have the same people. You're probably unlikely to have the same systems that all talk to each other. So there's just a lot of disconnection in the systems, the processes, and the people who come together to execute important work.
Oh, that's so interesting. So if you're a project manager on a construction project, I mean, you have a lot of challenges, but what do you think the most, significant challenge is today?
I think that there's kind of three key challenges.
Hmm.
Again, probably not completely unique to construction, um, but it's certainly not that there's a lack of technology in construction. The VC community and significant players in the tech space have invested billions and billions of dollars in technology to support the different parts of the project delivery lifecycle. But each of those offers both an opportunity to solve a problem, but introduces the challenge of a data silo
Hmm.
because not all of these systems talk to one another. These systems are often disintegrated. Deep integrations between systems is not something that is undertaken across all the tools that are used to execute the work. And then, the most widely deployed tool and technology today for construction is Excel, which kind of magnifies both of those challenges. And then the final one, which is, prevalent on every single job site, is connecting the field and the office, and the field and the job site and the office. There's just different technologies, different form factors that work in different settings. And that's always been one of the challenges to overcome is how do you get the right data to the right person in the right format where they're doing their work.
Fantastic. And where are we in the construction industry? What's that data-driven approach? I imagine it's all over the map. You've seen
Yeah.
all the best practices as well. What's the sort of state of the industry in terms of real-time project data across the team?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a journey. I, I think that the quite honestly, I think the pandemic played a role in accelerating technology adoption in construction.
Hmm.
I think that, with remote workforces, with, the inability to get together like you would, folks had to rely on technology to fill the gaps in communication. And I think that combined with the changing in the age of the workforce is going to play a major role in how data gets used, how technology gets leveraged to build things going forward. One of the stats that sticks out to me is that between now and 2031, about 40% of the current construction workforce is going to age out of the industry.
Wow.
So the ability for these construction companies to backfill that brain drain and the bodies to get the work done is going to really require a concerted effort on their part to attract and retain talent. And one of the ways by which they're doing that is by modernizing how they work. The workforce that's coming up has been digital from practically day one. And so they expect that the facility and the tools that give them that facility with the way they get their job done and the impact they can have because it's much more integrated is really important to the next generation. And so I think that there's a couple big drivers there for how and why digitization is happening and accelerating in construction today.
Interesting. So let's switch gears a little bit to QuickBase. I can understand why Excel isn't the ideal tool for most things, actually, but for construction project managers. But how do you solve the data disconnect problem? What's the QuickBase sort of methodology or approach?
Yeah, I think QuickBase is really unique. Something I learned about, when I joined QuickBase and thinking about QuickBase in the context of the tech stack of your typical construction company today, whether that's a general contractor or a specialty contractor, and whether you're a very small business or a very large business. There's some kind of key, big rocks in that tech stack that folks rely on to execute their work. Probably in construction, it always starts with some type of ERP, whether you're talking about QuickBooks or Sage or, in the upper end, CMIC or Oracle. And the thing that I recognized early and see really as a huge opportunity for QuickBase and the way that we fit into the tech stack of our customers today is that QuickBase can both be a brick in that system by solving a specific problem, or it can be the mortar that connects the different tools that are already in use. And so I think by being this kind of brick and mortar, depending on the problem the customer is trying to solve, how we coexist within that tech stack and ecosystem, how we extend the value of existing systems like Procore, like Sage, how we connect Office and Field with QuickBase and FastField. We really have a unique opportunity to connect that data that underlies that, because once you have those core data structures established within QuickBase, your projects, your people, your resources, then having that connect to those other systems of record, whether that's your project management system, your ERP system, your HR system, there is underlying data that's common, and you really do need to connect it to get a handle on how you're performing your work.
Interesting. So it's more than just the back office team. It's the project manager, obviously, the site team, the back office, all working together with the same set of data. Is that the goal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that we've seen is that we really, because we are so configurable, we can meet the needs of the different participants who are
Hmm.
working on a project. Whether you're the CEO and leading a company that's managing projects across territories, across states, across the world even, you need a certain view at a portfolio level about the project performance. And then you take that view and you parse it down to the project executives that may have multiple projects, to the project manager who may have a couple projects, to the project engineer who's on a single project. That information really needs to telescope and be connected to help the field engineer do his job, capture the data that's relevant for the part of the scope of the work that they're responsible for, but connect it in a way that gives visibility to where the project is all the way up the chain. And I think QuickBase is uniquely positioned to be able to do that.
Interesting. So I'm looking here at your website. You have some other tools that empower your customers, like the Project Hub Pro app. How does that fit into this scenario?
Yeah, so I think that we have just released the Project Hub Pro app about 2 weeks ago,
Wow.
and
Okay.
so it is brand new. One of the things that I saw, one of the things that QuickBase saw in deciding to invest in the construction vertical was QuickBase had a lot of organic success in the construction segment with customers leveraging QuickBase, again, either to solve a specific problem or to use QuickBase as a data connector between different systems. Um, and then some of the use cases that we had been solving very well for a number of customers were CRM and bid management, safety, time tracking, materials management, prefabrication. So what I realized was we had a bunch of spokes, if you will, that typically hooked into other systems to extend the value or connect the data. But we didn't, within our own ecosystem, have a hub that could serve as that connector for these other, functional use cases. And so with the Project Hub now, we have within QuickBase the ability to be that hub. And I think particularly for mid-sized companies and below who aren't investing today in solutions like a Procore, they can really get a view of their business through a single pane of glass in a highly configurable platform like QuickBase, and with the Project Hub as a starting point to collect their data, gain the views of that data, and be able to take action on that data in ways that they hadn't been able to before, because the tools they had available to them, probably QuickBooks or Sage, and a whole bunch of spreadsheets in the different departments in their business.
Interesting. So you mentioned you sort of grew up organically, sort of grassroots in the construction space. But what about the C-suite? I mean, they're looking at bigger picture items as well, like risk mitigation and, project visibility and viability, cost control. I mean, how do these perspectives come into play on projects?
Yeah, I think that it is about our ability to connect that data, and if we're not connecting or even collecting data in the field around quality, around safety, around project progress, if we aren't connecting or collecting that data in the field with a tool like FastField that we have that is perfectly suited for job site data collection, if you aren't collecting in some structured and organized way what's actually happening on the job site, any data you're rolling up to the CEO on project progress, outstanding billings, resource utilization, project percent complete, project budget, you can't get to those answers that are important to the CEO if you don't have the people executing the work, if they don't have a mechanism by which they can monitor, capture information, data, and insights into their specific scopes of work that then roll up to that larger picture and the overall performance of the company.
Interesting. What a great opportunity. And looking ahead, as you're focused on the construction space, what new integrations, new opportunities do you see for the rest of the year? It's a pretty vast industry, probably one of the world's top few industries, right?
Yeah. So I think where I see ourselves with Project Hub today and where we're going as a starting point, and I think that we've landed our first customer on Project Hub, and in many ways, I think that their story is going to be the story that we see replicated again and again. And this was a mid-size electrical contractor. They saw Project Hub, were intrigued, and were talking to a leader in the business. And we talked and tried to understand where they were today in their digital journey. They talked about the fact that they ran QuickBooks to capture their back office, financials, but every department in his business had a spreadsheet.
Mm,
And so as a first step, we took his three most important spreadsheets that aren't connected, and we imported them into the Project Hub in a matter of an hour or so, got those spreadsheets in there. And through the import of those spreadsheets into the project hub, that project executive or business executive was able to have a view across his business into those things that we were talking about: outstanding billings, resource
Mm.
utilization, project percent complete. I mean, truly seeing the lights going on, the lights, light bulb flashing when he saw that, he was like, this is fantastic, but I don't want to be uploading spreadsheets because that defeats the whole purpose of this. We need to integrate this with QuickBooks as a starting point. And then we need to develop applications in the field that are collecting information on our project progress in the field, on our resource allocations, on our billings. And so, for him, the problem he was trying to solve that he didn't have because he only had his, QuickBooks and spreadsheets, was getting a single pane of glass through which he could see the state of his business. Once he had that at the macro level, they can now start thinking about what problem is most pressing for them to solve next. Is that safety? Is that material tracking? Is it fleet management? It really is about the customer then defining their journey from this starting point to the other problems they're going to solve, and know that at every step in the way, they're just connecting more data to provide that comprehensive view of their business.
Fascinating. And some of the biggest construction projects in the world are outside of the US. This must be quite a global opportunity as well.
Yeah, I think that the way projects get delivered more or less is the same, whether you're sitting in Boston or sitting in London or sitting in Sydney. I've had a great opportunity to get to work with folks across the world in trying to solve this problem for years. And it really does come down to those fundamentals, like we talked about. There's just too many disconnected systems. There's too many spreadsheets. That's not helping people get better, deliver their projects, on budget, on schedule, with quality and safety.
Brilliant. So you guys attend a lot of really interesting events that are not familiar to me as a techie. What's on your radar the next few weeks and months? Must have a lot going on.
Yeah, we have some really interesting stuff coming up across the board, working with organizations like NECA and Electri, working with the AGC and E&R. And I think one of the things that's really important for us as we establish our business across the United States is how we develop hubs, right? Construction happens locally. And so as we look to establish our presence, leveraging what I would say is our anchor customers, like in, say, Portland, Oregon, right? Portland, Oregon is not leveraging electrical contractors from Missouri. There's folks around Portland that work together. Folks in this industry tend to move from company to company within the towns and cities within which they work. And so really establishing communities, if you will, leveraging the local associations, leveraging the national associations that have things like local golf events in the spring and in the fall, where we can bring together general contractors who are working with specialty contractors, some who have experience with QuickBase, working with others who are just hearing about QuickBase and what we have to offer in construction for the first time. So I think taking that local approach, but leveraging the national organizations that are kind of the backbone of thought leadership and enablement, both for the general contractors and specialty contractors, is a great kind of partnership, and then being able to execute it where work is happening.
Wonderful. Well, there's plenty of work to be done, including a QuickBase. So congratulations on that, and onwards and upwards. Thanks for joining and sharing a peek behind the curtain regarding an industry many of us are not familiar with. So it's amazing to see the work there.
Great. Thanks for having me, Evan. Great to meet you.
Thanks. Thanks for joining. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching.